Every week, Hillsdale College President Larry P. Arnn joins Hugh Hewitt to discuss great books, great men, and great ideas. This is the Hillsdale Dialogues, part of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. More episodes at podcast.hillsdale.edu or wherever you find your audio. Also at the Hillsdale College Podcast Network, check out the Radio Free Hillsdale Hour, the Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education Podcast, The Larry P. Arnn Show, and more, all at podcast.hillsdale.edu.
Good morning, Glory America, bonjour, hi, Canada. I'm Hugh Hewitt. My guest is Dr. Larry Arnn of Hillsdale College, because this is the Hillsdale Dialogue. Once a week, Dr. Arnn and I gather, talk about great men, great ideas, or a great issue of the day, and this is one of those weeks in the latter category. Originally, good morning, Dr. Arnn. How are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm disturbed this morning. Yeah. We are talking on Thursday morning for airing on Friday about Wednesday morning, about a set of indictments that came down, and I didn't even prepare you for this. I prepared you to talk about the Harvard case, and we'll get there. But I am really disturbed. I think this is perilous times, Dr. Arnn. How did you react to this?
Bad news. I had the misfortune of seeing it in the middle of the night. And I thought, back in the day, that Trump raised legitimate concerns, and he did it for a month too long. But is it a crime to do that? There's reasons to wonder about the election. They changed voting procedures in big ways in much of the country. And they, in general, they did it in the executive branch alone. Constitution places the state legislatures, not the state governments, state legislatures in charge of the manner of choosing electors, and they altered those things in several states. And so there should be questions about that. But, as I say, I think the writing was on the wall, and he might have picked a moment to retire gracefully. Let's say that's a political judgment. Let's say I made or you made or anybody made a different one from him. Is a political judgment criminal? And he's making the point that they're interfering with the 24 election. And does anybody doubt that that's got something to do with these things that are going on? I mean,
now, I want to make clear, you didn't hear my show on the morning we're taping this, did you?
No.
Okay, good. Then you won't know what I've said or my opinions. I want to read you a count from the indictment, paragraph from the indictment. It's a paragraph on paragraph 83. And you can just react to me what you think Special Counsel Smith is trying to do and what you think this actually does. On the evening of January 3, the defendant, the President of the United States, met for a briefing on an overseas national security issue with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and other senior national security advisors. The chairman briefed the defendant on the issue, which had previously arisen in December, as well as possible ways the defendant could handle it. When the chairman and another advisor recommended the defendant take no action because Inauguration Day was only 17 days away and any course of action could trigger something unhelpful, the defendant calmly agreed, stating, quote, "Yeah, you're right. It's too late for us. We're going to give that to the next guy." End of quote. Now, before I tell you what I think that means, what do you think, if anything, that means?
Well, it either means something mysterious or it means something plain. If it means something plain, it means he's not going to take a decisive action that will affect his successor. I guess you could read into it in case there is a different one, but he had to be thinking that events were not moving in a good direction. So, yeah. I mean, but that's a responsible thing to do, right?
Thank you. It is a responsible action, and the man can hold two thoughts. He can believe he's being screwed, and that maybe he'll convince the vice president, and I'm glad he didn't because I think the vice president acted correctly. But it doesn't mean he was lying when he said he thought he was screwed. In fact, it can mean exactly the opposite. He's calm in a national crisis, and he has calmly assessed what happened, and he thinks he's getting screwed. And all of these charges go to his state of mind. And I do not believe they can prove that he knew he was, that they can't prove that he knew he was lying. I don't think that's possible. And we're going to do that in the middle of an election. I am worried for the country.
Yeah, well, it's a large, there's a larger set of things going on here, right? I mean, technology and wealth and ideology come together to produce greater powers of engineering elections than we have ever known. And that's dangerous. And mind you, whoever does it, right? I mean, you have to have checks and balances in government. You have to have offsets all the time. And then the way the Constitution is contrived is the executive power is concentrated in the president, and it's a limited power. So, for example, on or near Inauguration Day, he apparently didn't think he could make big decisions about national security because it's about to change. Well, that's the Constitution. But what if it's true that the sources of information are concentrated and organized in partisan directions, and there's, it just changes everything, doesn't it? That so much is known about everybody and everything, and there's an ability to filter information to them. There's a wonderful quote from Churchill I like, and I have to paraphrase it because I'm not prepared for this. Except maybe
you're always prepared for everything, but you have not yet. You haven't grabbed the site.
He says that the strength and safety of Britain is the little man alone in the voting booth, making up his mind. You see, well, are they alone now? People bring them ballots. They pick them up anywhere. Is there influence when somebody brings you a ballot and then picks it back up again? And that whole thing, see, that means that it moves the initiative away from the voter. And that's what you want. I mean, 2/3 of the purpose of the Constitution, let's say, it's an exact number, is to decentralize authority. We're going to have a great and mighty government. We're going to be able to defend ourselves against the world. We're going to be able to unite a great continent under a free people, never been done before. And then on the other hand, the source of power is in the individual. And so that's what I worry about. I worry about the whole thing, that elections are now engineered.
Now, Doctor, on that point, you're a fair and conservative individual, but Hillsdale is not a Republican or a Democratic institution. You try and maintain objectivity. I want to play for you a quote by the former president's lawyer to Brett Baer on the night of the indictment. It's cut number 17, gentlemen. Get it ready. This is what he said about the upcoming trial on these indictments, not on the documents, not on that idiot case in Manhattan, but on these charges about lying and trying to conspire to hold on to power. Here's what his lawyer said. Cut 17.
One thing I will say, though, in 2020, Mr. Trump's campaign had a few weeks to gear up and present evidence, and it was very difficult. We now have the ability in this case to issue our own subpoenas, and we will relitigate every single issue in the 2020 election in the context of this litigation. It gives President Trump an opportunity that he has never had before, which is to have subpoena power since January 6th in a way that can be exercised in federal court.
So, Larry Arnn, do you think it would be relevant to subpoena Mark Zuckerberg and ask him the purpose of the Zuck Bucks and whether or not he intended to influence the election?
Good idea, yeah.
Would you think it would be relevant to subpoena the 51 people who signed the letter saying the Hunter Biden laptop was misinformation?
Yeah, that's right. And
would it be relevant to subpoena the Pennsylvania Supreme Court?
Yeah, that I don't know about that, but you're a lawyer. But it does remind us of something, doesn't it? And that is that the Constitution is not wholly broken, right? That the courts are still independent. They are under assault all the time, and their independence is under assault. But, and everybody says the D.C. jury won't go for him. We already know the outcome if it's going to be a trial there. I don't think we do, and I pray not. But there is going to be this process, and, unless the judge is hostile in ways that might be reversible on appeal, he's going to get to make his case. That's a very good point the lawyer makes.
It is. When we come back, I'm going to spend one more segment on, it shouldn't be U.S. v. Trump, it should be Beltway v. Trump. And then we're going to move on to the Harvard case in the second half. And then next week, we're back into Churchill and World War I, where I am more comfortable, and the ominous signs show we have returned. Stay tuned, America. The Hillsdale Dialogue is underway. All things Hillsdale at hillsdale.edu. And the Hillsdale Podcast Network now has this and all the Hillsdale podcasts. Don't miss that either. I'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Dr. Arnn is my guest, and we are talking this half hour about U.S. v. Trump, which, as I said in the last segment, ought to be called Beltway v. Trump, and next half hour about the Harvard case. Dr. Arnn, in this U.S. v. Trump case, I am worried about this year and next year, but I'm worried about 4 years from now and 8 years and 12 years and of prosecuting political opponents. It sends a shudder down my spine to think we are going down this road.
Yeah, that means that it gives, if you can do this, it gives additional force to the people who have the upper hand, right? I mean, there's who was it? One of the members of the Politburo was shot during a Politburo meeting, early days of the Soviet Union. And after that, they sort of made an agreement not to do that anymore. Wait, two or 15 can play at this game. Well, this is not a good game, right?
No, it's not.
And another thing about it is, if it's, finally what you want, Lincoln said a beautiful thing. He said many. A constitutional majority shifting easily with changes in public mood is the only true sovereign of a free people, right? Mm-hmm. And that means that, as I say, if you concentrate power in the ways that we do, and part of it is just technology, it's just a massive fact that your news can be filtered for you individually. And that means en masse, collectively, too. And so we didn't used to be able to do that. And that's just power. That's a great theme of Winston Churchill's, right? When people become powerful, the chances that some are going to become more powerful over others go up a lot.
Well, the idea of this Jack Smith, I call him the Javert of America, coming out of nowhere, being recalled from The Hague, having lost a case at the Supreme Court, which was an extravagant prosecution of a sitting governor that was overturned by the court unanimously. I've never believed the deep state stuff. I believe we have an administrative state that is perilous in its power. But this is a public prosecutor. It really is Javert from Les Mis. It really is scary. Yeah.
They don't, what they're accusing Trump of is lack of restraint and personal grasping for power. Look at this. I mean, and it's all over the place. At some point, Trump is accused of not bowing to the will of the people. Are they? What about the people? See, I think, that there's a they, right? Who's they? My old friend John Marini, who sort of started many people, including me, down the road of thinking about the growth of the administrative state, and that was in the 1970s. He has written, if you have a large class of people who are educated alike and who see a different form of government as the right form, then they will just act, and they don't have to be coordinated. And what is the issue here, right? Where is the protection for the rights of the people under a powerful government? That in the Constitution, that is in decentralization above all, and in the separations of powers that makes possible. There are many constituencies. They don't even all vote at the same time and in the same way, and they delegate their authority at different times in different ways to competing branches of government. That's the old scheme. But that scheme has been extensively overturned, and it was done for reasons that are explicit. They thought, no, the real protection will be that there will be a professional and tenured class of people who are highly trained, and they won't have, this is actually an argument, I can find it for the audience if they want me to. We can put it up. R.J. Pastrito wrote a great book review of this, of an old book, and the author of the book, whose name is, it's on the tip of my tongue, but I can't remember right now, he argues that you don't have to worry about these people abusing power because they won't have any interest separate from their jobs, because they will have tenure and they will be guaranteed a salary, and so there will be no reason for them to act in their personal interest. That's the burden of the argument, right? And is that as safe as separation of powers? Everything starts with the voter, and the voter is independent in making his decisions. That's, that old system, which has worked longer than anything ever in history, that system is substantially changed now. And
I had a nice old lady call me on Tuesday, 80-year-old Virginian lady, said, why do people hate Trump so much? And I said, without even thinking, because he beat Hillary and he disintermediated their power and their money. And I think that's it.
Yeah, he's vulnerable to this kind of charge because he's a show pony and talks about himself a lot. So yeah. it looks like it's all about him.
What's that say about you and me?
It's hard to say.
I'll be right back. We're going to talk about the Harvard case next, as promised to Dr. Arnn. Stay tuned, America. It's Hugh Hewitt.
Hey, it's Scott Bertram. If you haven't yet, now would be a good time to check out the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. It's over at podcast.hillsdale.edu. What's there? Free nationwide access to all of Hillsdale's podcast content. That includes shows like the Hillsdale Dialogues, the Radio Free Hillsdale Hour, the Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education Podcast, the Larry P. Arnn Show, and now, new Imprimis. You can listen to any of those programs wherever you are and whenever you want, and it's always free. So find out more about all of our shows at podcast.hillsdale.edu. You can subscribe to any program you want. New episodes will come right to your device, or grab the Hillsdale College Podcast Network Superfeed, and you'll be the first to get access to all of the content posted on the site. If you want to come close to stepping inside a classroom here at Hillsdale College, well, the Hillsdale College Podcast Network is for you. Check it out at podcast.hillsdale.edu. That's podcast.hillsdale.edu.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. The Hillsdale Dialogue is underway. Today's guest, Dr. Larry Arnn, president of Hillsdale College. All things Hillsdale are found at hillsdale.edu. All of these podcasts are collected, if you're an iTunes user, at Hillsdale Dialogue iTunes. But you can also go to the Hillsdale Podcast Network. Google that, and you'll find not only these, but many other podcasts from Hillsdale, which are wonderful. And, of course, if you want an application to go to the, I believe now, the country's preeminent institution, go to hillsdale.edu. Dr. Arnn, higher education was the subject of a Supreme Court opinion. Students for Fair Admissions versus Harvard, which also involved the University of North Carolina. Private college, Harvard and Hillsdale are both private colleges, and a state college, University of North Carolina. And not surprisingly, the Chief Justice, joined by 5 others, absolutely forbade the use of race in admissions. What did you think of that decision? What about its implications?
Well, you have to add the caveat that if you're acting with the money of the government, you can't do that. And that's True. Because the Constitution of the nation its goal is to be colorblind, to be no respecter of persons. race, creed, or national origin, says the Articles of Association of Hillsdale College from 1844. So if you enroll yourself in that, then you're acting for the government, or you're acting for the people under the authority of the Constitution, and you can't do that. And that's the right decision, of course. And then on education grounds, it's the right decision because either the human soul is immaterial and can be free to think, or it isn't. And if it's conditioned by the color of the individual, then it isn't. But college, what happens in college is what happens in life, except it happens intensely and in a somewhat different way than normal. What happens in our lives is we try to grow, and we try to overcome and grow outside our many, limitations. And we all have a lot, right? Some people have more than others. It's a fact. But education is supposed to be the road upwards, right? And that means that you can't really effectively in a college. What I like to say about the key to running a college is you got to get them to stop thinking about themselves. They have to learn, and it's a achievement of soul. They have to learn to attend to the thing before them and see it, right? And today the way kids are raised at Hillsdale, we, for the most part, managed to get it out of them. What's interesting about a thing that they look at is what do they think about it? Their opinion about it is supposed to be decisive, right? Or we tend to that. Social media encourages that and gives it a voice. But the truth is, you have to still all that. And, I like to teach, my favorite thing to teach is, well, there's a few, but Aristotle and Churchill are up there, right? If you're going to understand them, Aristotle tells you how to do that. You have to step outside yourself. You have to focus everything on the source, as he calls it, which is the information, the thing, the phenomenon you're looking at. And can you do that or can you not? And in De Anima, on the soul, Aristotle says that we can do that. And the way we do it is that we have this soul that actually becomes nothing except what it's thinking about. It's a very beautiful passage, too, and very practical.
You remind me, a wholly different subject, but it does touch on Churchill. My son is reading Alone, the second volume in the Manchester book, and he just came across the page in which, on the eve of Hitler showing up in Prague, Churchill says, "Now I shall concentrate my mind on the reign of James II." And Manchester says this is testament to his awesome power of concentration, that he could put aside everything he had predicted is coming true. And he would be able to walk up the steps and write about James II, even as Hitler is taking the rest of Czechoslovakia in the second gulp.
That's a very good point. And expand it just a step. You're learning from your children, as I do.
Of course.
Churchill, he painted, right? And he writes a wonderful essay. One of the greatest things he ever wrote is an essay called Painting as a Pastime. And it has a partner written about the same thing called hobbies. And he says you need a hobby that engages you. You need to take your mind, he says, the soul is like a coat, and they wear out in the sleeves the first. That's why you see sport coats with patches on the elbows. He said, but the soul is also magical because if you use a different part of it, the worn part repairs itself. So in other words, to be able to shift your focus is crucial, not just to effectiveness, to sanity. And, we teach young people today that they're victims or perpetrators born to it. And that's not a good thing to do.
And they're losing their ability to concentrate. Do you realize, I got articles sent to me yesterday about high school debate, of which I have long been a fan and a proponent. Apparently, high school debate is thoroughly racialized and politicized. And you cannot win an argument, even if you're assigned the opposite case, if you're on the wrong side of the argument in the eyes of the judges, and the judges are increasingly students who are themselves participants. It's a nightmare.
Yeah. Hillsdale College has a lot of success in debate. We've won some national championships, the kids who do it do great. I went one time a long time ago, and I didn't like it. I'm told my old friend Brian Kennedy's son was a national figure in debate, and he was up against our kids at the one that I went to, and I ran into him. He's a graduate of University of Chicago Law School now, very smart boy.
Ooh.
And I talked to him about it, and I had noticed things. I'd noticed a temper in the students, which is they were just trying to win. And, what about the quality of the argument? It's not a good habit in life, by the way, to judge yourself entirely by outcomes, because you're never fully in control of them. And what you can be in control of is how good a job do you do. So anyway, I asked this boy, this young man, now fancy lawyer, I guess, I said, what do people say about our kids? And he said, yeah, your kids know a lot. He was that kind, too. He went to Scott University in California, but he said they know a lot, and they're always talking about things that nobody else would have thought of. Well, that's right. See, they're thinking they know some things, and so a question is put in the debate. Everything that bears on it, you need to know to do the best job. Well, now there's this template that's put over it all. Everything, the template is whatever's on the front page of the New York Times this week, and especially...
And it's often race and gender.
Yeah.
And the argument for quotas and diversity and admissions is that we need race and gender in order to have good arguments and good concentration. And it's not true.
Well, it drives it out, right? I mean,
correct. It's
dangerous. I had a student last fall, for the only time that's ever happened. I was in the fall. I tend to sit with the freshmen because they're still half high school students and they're fun. And I ask them lots of things. The most fundamentally, why'd you come here? What do you think we're doing here? But I ask them how they're doing, and a young woman said to me, "Well, for the first time I can remember, I'm not afraid."
Ah.
You see? And is that supposed to inspire debate, and discussion and thinking?
Well, that does, but the opposite doesn't.
That's right.
Fear silences.
That's right. And that's the thing right now. We're to be governed by fear.
And now I'm afraid of Jack Smith. Not myself, but I am afraid of future Jack Smiths. We'll be back. I want to talk to Dr. Arnn about whether he thinks colleges will comply with a Supreme Court ruling. Stay tuned. I'll be right back on the Hillsdale Dialogue. All things Hillsdale at hillsdale.edu.
Hillsdale College is a small, Christian, classical liberal arts college that operates independently of government funding, and we want you or your son or daughter to apply. At Hillsdale, students grow in heart and mind by studying timeless truths in a supportive community dedicated to the highest things. Hillsdale College costs significantly less than other nationally ranked private liberal arts colleges and receives regular recognition as a best value, and nearly all students receive financial aid. Our robust core curriculum, vibrant student life, and 8-to-1 student-to-faculty ratio make for an education like no other. For more information or to fill out an application, visit hillsdale.edu/info. That's hillsdale.edu/info.
Welcome back, America. Last segment of the Hillsdale Dialogue. Next week, we return to Chapter 4 of the first volume of The World Crisis. What a book. But Dr. Arnn, the Supreme Court has ruled. It has ruled definitively. It has said you shall not use race. If you accept federal money and you're a private institution, or if you're a public institution, you shall not use race in admissions. Do you believe that universities, by and large, will comply with the ruling of the Supreme Court?
That's, written in the political battles to come, right? Ultimately, if this opinion can be sustained, that means the Supreme Court has been sustained. That means that the political conditions of sustaining it, in other words, you still have separation of powers and you still have You don't have one overwhelming party dominating. They're trying to take the court down right now.
Yes.
And so if that, sooner or later, if that's sustained, that means there'll be a political basis for it, and then probably there will be some improvement. But they'll wriggle and try not to. And you got to remember, people, I always try to remind people about this. There are some thousands of colleges in America, and there are not 20 like Harvard, right? They have, I read the opinions in the case, or especially the very great opinion by Justice Thomas, and they have 60,000 applications for 2,000 places. We have a surfeit of applications, but not that much, right? And so what they should want to do, and what they used to want to do, I imagine, everybody did, is they should pick the most worthy. And they should try to make sure that that's even. That is to say that everybody gets a chance. They should... I got, back in the day, I got into some fancy law schools, and I once overheard one of my professors say, this boy comes from a little town in Arkansas, and he went to the state university, but he's really smart, you should give him a chance. And I heard him make that argument about me on the phone. I was sitting outside his office. And that's a good thought, right? And I did get into that one. But and I didn't get into Harvard Law School, by the way. But
nor did I, twice.
Yeah. You did not?
No, twice I got turned down by Harvard Law School.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that means that I was a quicker learner than you. I guess. But then
took 2 mule kicks.
The really great lesson that I learned was don't go to law school.
I wish I'd learned that. I went to Michigan. Yeah, I didn't learn that.
Yeah, so they should be trying, Harvard engages in an activity toward a goal. And it says that the goal is truth. And the activity is learning. And it should be true. It is true, by the way, that whatever goes on at Harvard or any college, whatever goes on at Hillsdale College has consequences far outside its borders.
Yeah.
Because people learn and they change and they grow, and in the right environment, they do that to a higher level and more rapidly. So they should be aiming to sustain that activity, and that's where they go wrong, in my opinion. And see, the truth is, I don't really care what they do. I mean, what I need is I need 350 really great kids every year who can do the work and are dying to do it, right? And if I can get that, then I can carry on college, if the law will leave me alone in some other respects. And Harvard should think of it that way, too. They should want to carry this on at the highest level.
What do you think they think about? Because I have a theory, but I don't want to substitute my theory for you. What do you think their admission officers are trying to do? Well,
it becomes, for them, I guess maybe I have some sympathy for them. It becomes kind of artificial, because if they took all the people who have a 4-point plus, they can't take a third of them, right?
Right.
And so, and they differentiate. So it's very hard for them, right? They got everybody trying to go there. And so it's easy to be tempted away from the idea that merit is the thing.
But wouldn't the answer then be to take everyone who is worthy, by whatever definition, by SATs or GPAs or whatever, put their names in a hat and draw? Well, as opposed to trying to decide what cannot be decided in the absence of deep study?
Yeah, chance would be better than that. And see, if they did that would have an advantage, and that is they wouldn't be in control of engineering the lives of these young people. And what you really want, Churchill had a phrase he liked: an open field and a fair chance. Well, this is part of the centralization of the society against which I protest, as a rule, and it's not a good thing just in how we live. Okay, I'm going to pick up that point if you're going to go.
Yeah, we are done for this week, but we will be back next week with this book. I have the Bloomsbury edition of Winston Churchill's The World Crisis, and we will be on this chapter 4, Admiral's All. and you have time to go and read it before we reconvene next week, and I really hope you will. On behalf of Dwayne and Adam and Harley, and thank you, Dr. Arnn. All things Hillsdale at hillsdale.edu. The Hillsdale Podcast Network is magnifico, as is the Winston Churchill Project over there. Go, study it all, get the application, go where you will learn.
Thanks for listening to the Hillsdale Dialogues, part of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. More episodes at podcast.hillsdale.edu or wherever you find your audio. For more information about Hillsdale College, head to hillsdale.edu.